Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to another Regen virtual classroom. As in good tradition, we're going to play some music and wait for some of the late ones to arrive. We'll play about a minute of this tune. Again, it's a playlist on Spotify, thanks to Paul.
Step taking me home on the road, barefoot two-step taking me home on the road, chanting our desire way. Ooh, ooh, oh yeah, that's right. Told me growing up, rhythm is the key. Rhythm is the key, yes, yeah. Rhythm is the key. Unlock the door to your ancestry. Unlock the door to your...
All right, we'll leave it on that. Rhythm is the key. When you're in a good rhythm, you're in flow. Welcome to the virtual Regen classroom, everyone, today. As always, let's give our undivided attention. Let's be interactive. Ask lots of questions, and in tradition of our virtual classrooms, let's turn our cameras on, nod our heads and wave and be very interactive and ask lots of questions along the way. Excellent, good stuff. Welcome everyone. And Helen and Hugo, how is everything out in the patch after the severe warnings of weather and mayhem that we've endured, or you've endured at head office?
That's right, and we've got no water now. We're not allowed to drink the water. So we're ignoring that. So we're coping, but it's really you just get to see, you know, how much we take for granted in our little society. So very, very thankful that everything's pretty much back up, and we have a great community here. You know, really pulled together. It's just been fabulous.
Excellent. Well, it's been really interesting being on the other end of like seeing, you know, your power went out, your mobile service disconnected, you had no phone lines, no internet, and what do you do? And then like some people were trapped with trees covering the roads, and I've seen some images this week of like train lines completely out of order because there's just so much debris on them, and it is crazy what can happen and how easily we can become so disconnected when we live in this world where we rely on technology. So it's great to see how community comes together, not only on top of COVID and lockdowns, but then also hecticness of weather patterns.
Yeah, everyone pulled together. It really was fabulous, and we're very, very lucky that we've now got the power again. And we're back home. We went away. We went down to our daughter's because we had nothing. Had an open fire, which got the coffee going the first day, and that's it.
Ray, as you just said, the importance of community, and I think that's something that hopefully with regenerative agriculture, that the community, well, food and fibre producers and community get close together.
Absolutely, and what a great time to be running a regenerative business and you know, working on a farm and regenerating and healing our soils. I see some familiar faces, and I see Alan's joined us again tonight. I haven't seen Alan for a little while, so welcome back, Alan. And Martin's in the darkness, so not sure if he's meditating or just working out his lights. But our guest tonight is Geoff. Welcome to the call, Geoff. We're super excited. I have your book in my hand that you've written and put together, but welcome to the call and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everybody. Well, I'm coming to you from Brisbane tonight, so probably a little bit warmer and drier than those of you in Victoria. But I grew up in Melbourne, just around the corner from the patch in Montrose, which is probably a suburb of Melbourne these days, but was a sort of little mountain village when I was a boy. And as I'll sort of cover off in my presentation, my mum's family were Yarra Valley mixed farmers. So that's my background and connection. And as Ray's just indicated, I've just published a book called Your Life, Your Planet. So that kept me busy for a big chunk of last year. And I'm also working on a PhD about business thinking for sustainable food producers in urban areas. So that sort of relates to the talk that I'm going to be giving tonight.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. I'm super excited to see your presentation, and I love, you know, what we spoke about before about bridging that gap of running your farm and your enterprise and everything you do as a business and approaching that as a regenerative point of view. So over to you. Share your slides, take control, take us on a ride, and yeah, any questions along the way, feel free to engage with the audience and our members, and we can monitor the chat as well if you need be. We are seeing your presenter slides. Just, yeah, perfect. Good stuff.
Only momentarily. All right. Well, welcome everybody. So that I can show the slides, I've just turned off the chat and the screen. So Ray, if people are indicating that they would like to ask me a question or anything, could you just interrupt me, please?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, welcome to you wherever you are, whether you're online now or looking at the recording. I would just like to start by acknowledging the sovereignty of the traditional owners on the land on which I work, which are the Yugara and Turrbal people here in Mianjin, the original name for the area now known as Brisbane. So since most of us work on the land, it's important for us to think about how that land came to be under our care. So the things that I want to, or the things that I do, I've talked about the sustainability transitions to urban food provision, which I'm covering off in my PhD. We've mentioned Your Life, Your Planet. And when I work with businesses and so on, I do that under the name of Great Notion, which is business thinking for creative people, social enterprise, and increasingly for urban food providers. So that's my background. As I mentioned, I come from a family, the Payne family, who, like many other settlers in that area, took a hill and named it after themselves. So there was Payne Hill, Chapman Hill, Gordian Hill. My great-great-grandfather was a Payne, my great-great-grandmother was a Gordian. And so they were, you know, neighbouring hills. Payne Hill is now a winery. There's my mum at the old family home on Payne Hill visiting the winery. And her dad, who we all called Pa, he was really someone who loved the land. He was a mixed farmer. He had geese, a couple of pigs, a small dairy herd of about 6 cows, grew berries, managed the local creek to sort of get fish, mainly for the family and so on, and really was that old-fashioned 19th century farmer. I mean, he lived in the 20th century, but he never owned a motorised vehicle. And so he and his son Tom used to take the food to market in a neighbouring truck until Tom was old enough to drive and buy his own truck. Now, Tom was someone who loved fruit. To see Tom go through a box of cherries off a new species of cherries that he'd just grown that were having their first fruit was really to understand what the term a labour of love means. Tom loved fruit. Whereas my mum's brother-in-law, my Uncle Ray, he loved money. And so he ran a cool store in Coldstream and stored the fruit for all of his neighbours. And whenever a neighbour couldn't pay their cool store bills, Ray would take over their land. So he became a large landholder and a significant sort of figure in the area. And the reason I'm mentioning those, you know, male ancestors of mine and their particular love is that it's really important to understand what you love. And that's one of the things I'm going to be talking about tonight. what I'm going to talk about is how your love of things, your passion drives you, how your profession and your ability to earn money feeds you, and how your reputation positions you. So those are three high-level things, and I want to connect them very much to our views as business people. So I want to think about those high-level things through the lens of business. There's a tool called the Inner Hedgehog. That's one name for it. The Japanese use a similar tool called Ikagai. I'll put that word up on the screen later. Ikagai is a traditional Japanese view of having a balanced life. It has 4 parts to it. So in our typical Western way, we've simplified it and turned it into a self-improvement tool. And what it does is it looks at your passion, your ability to make money, and your abilities in general, or your reputation, what you're known for. And the point is that if you understand what each of those things are for you, then you have a very clear picture of what is going to make you successful. And so that's why it sort of falls into that self-improvement camp. It's used by a lot of personal coaches and people like that. But I find it quite useful for making sure that your business activities are aligned with your personal goals. And so that's why I put that up there tonight. And I'm using that to guide this talk. So the first part of the talk will be about passion. Then we'll stop and I'll ask if there are any questions. Feel free to interrupt along the way, but we'll actually sit there and sort of talk about the concepts for a moment. Then we'll talk about income and ways to think about the flow of money through business and what that means for us as food producers. And then we'll have a look at where you sit in a supply chain and how what that means for you and your sense of yourself in terms of your abilities and your reputation. So that's the sort of overview of what we're going to talk about. I've called the sections Harnessing Your Passion, the Process of Business, and Building Your Reputation. Any questions or comments so far? I'm just going to have a look at you all on the screen. Make sure.
No comments at the moment, and Bella does an amazing job of sharing links. So Bella will happily share the links of what you mentioned along the way. But having a business mindset, I'm loving how you're positioning this, and I think there needs to be more of this in our community, and I'm excited to see the next part.
All right, thanks very much. I'll just turn on the chat for a minute if I can find the thing. And no, I'll keep going. We'll come back to that. So Ikagai is Ikegai. If you want to sort of find that or put that on the chat, Bella. All right, let's get into that first part, which I called Harnessing Your Passion. So the more I look at this picture, the more I realise this is not what we actually want to achieve. We've got the passion out there on a bit of a dead-end road that looks rather precarious. So I got this as I thought this was a cute, inspirational slide, and then I suddenly realised, no, wrong way, go back. We don't want our passion to take us out on a limb. So I apologise for the inappropriateness of the image. Putting a big red cross through it may not be the best answer, but it was the best I could do at short notice. So we want to align our passion with what we're doing as business. And so there are different ways that we could think about that. There are different ways that we could think about our passion and how we want to look at that, how we want to identify what we care about, and how we want to align that with our business. So one of those would be, what do I love? One of those would be, where do I want to be in the future? One of them would be, what is my purpose? One of those would be, where do I fit in? Which is really to do with the third part of the talk. But the place that I like to start is what keeps me awake at night. But I'm not going to start there straight away. I'm going to go through each of those other areas just to have a think about why they are important and how we might look at them. So what do we love? Most of us love what we do. We love producing food. It's sustainable because we care about the earth, we care about the future, we care about nature, we care about the future of humanity. But some of us like dealing with animals. Some of us prefer dealing with plants. Some of us like dealing with customers, and some of us can't think of anything more revolting. And so these are the kinds of things that we have to understand about ourselves before we start to make strategic decisions about our business. So the danger is if we don't think about these things, then we're going to make poor decisions. We're going to end up in positions that we don't like. The problem that a lot of personal coaches and business consultants have is that they think by getting you to think about these things that they're solving your problems. And so the point that I'm making is we need to think about these things, but we need to think about these things through a practical lens. Similarly, if you think about where I want to be in 5 years, we don't want to be out on a limb having chased that tree. But probably the things that we want are all fairly similar. We want our practical problems to go away. We want our business to be running smoothly. We want to have time for ourselves and our family. We want to be regenerating the soil and nature as we do our work. And we want to be recognised for the work that we do. So these are all important things, but they're motherhood statements. It's very easy to say these things. I can predict that you would agree with those things without having had a conversation with you. So they're not all that useful. It's important for us to keep those in mind, but again, they don't usefully help us plan. When you go on a marketing course or a branding course, you will often be referred to Simon Sinek's why talk. And so what he says, if we don't understand why we're doing what we're doing, then we're not going to do it well. Customers buy from companies when they understand why the company is doing what it's doing, and when the reasons that they buy match the reasons that the company exists. So he and a lot of other branding people use the company Apple, the maker of Apple computers and iPhones and so on, as an example, because Apple is innovative, it's creative, it's cool, it's funky. And so the values that Apple has align with its customers. Now, we're starting to get down to things that actually have value in the market. So from a business point of view, Simon Sinek's talk is important because if you can answer those questions about why, you are talking about things that actually have value. You can make a branding statement and a marketing campaign out of your why. I make organic coffee because I love the smell of coffee beans in the morning, and I want you to love my coffee beans as much as I do. Now you're talking about connecting to your customers and actually marketing. And so even though this is still very high level concept, it's actually quite useful. And that's why it's such a famous talk. An even more sort of practical process is to use a purpose map. So I got this purpose map from a group called Priority Purpose. Helen Andrew, who runs PriorityPurpose.com, is someone that I've met. She lives on the Sunshine Coast. I've met her at various social enterprise conferences and sustainability conferences. She's a circular economy consultant. And the idea of what she says about a purpose map is that your purpose is your why. Your mission is your what. It's what you're setting out to do. Your vision is where you are going. And your impact is the how you're going to get there. And so that's a way to structure your why. It's a way to think about your purpose, your mission statement, your vision statement. And we know that businesses like to put these things together. We know that corporations have these things on their websites. But for those of us in small businesses with our hands in the dirt or up a cow's bum or whatever we're doing during the week, this might still seem a little bit abstract and airy-fairy. And so even though we're getting more practical and we're working our way from these very high-level concepts down to practice, and someone like Helen can be very supportive. In fact, she gives you a 20-minute free chat to help you structure your purpose, your mission, your vision, and your impact. So it's useful to get this kind of stuff, but it's still very high level. I've already mentioned the idea of the Inner Hedgehog. So here I've zoomed in on that earlier slide so you can see it a little bit more closely how it works. And so here we've labelled your physiology or your natural abilities. We've labelled your passion as the things that might be in your hobbies and your interests. And we've labelled your profession as your marketing skills. Now, this is an example where someone has identified that they love teaching, mentoring, typography, and problem solving. And when we go through a worked example later in the thing, I will actually use this for myself so that you can see how it works and how quickly you can go from a high level to a practical plan. But that's what the Inner Hedgehog is. A quick Google on Inner Hedgehog will find about 10 diagrams like this and about 100 personal coaches that will take your money and help you work through that. I'm working on an online version of it so that you can actually just type in your own words and help work your way through it. Then there's another tool which does more or less the same thing in a different order. It's a little more structured, and it works on what's called a theory of change. And this is used in a lot of social enterprise consulting to help people work out what impact they want to have in the world. And so it defines your impact first. So I want to change the world by, let's say I'm the coffee bean grower that I talked about earlier. My impact that I want to have might be to help all of the coffee growers in the northern rivers of New South Wales build an export market. That might be my desired impact. I think that's a good thing for whatever reasons I think that's a good thing, but that's the impact I want to have. So by starting with my impact, I can then work through this process and work out how I'm going to do it, what kind of connections I need to make, what kind of people I need to have on board. And that way I can structure my business based around the impact. And so this is getting much, much closer to the kinds of things that keep us awake at night. So those are the three tools that I'm recommending as being useful to help you think about your purpose. But I'm acknowledging that they are all still fairly high level. When we think about where I fit in, which is another way to think about how we position ourselves in the complicated world in which we operate, we can think about the supply chain. And I want to come back to that in the third part of the talk. The point that I want to make here is that you need to know who you are and what you care about. Someone might say to you, look, you've got strawberries and you're not selling all your strawberries every month. Why don't you invite people onto your farm to pick their own strawberries? I know someone who's done that and it's working really well for them. They're getting, just carloads of people coming up every weekend and paying money to pick strawberries. You don't have to do the backbreaking work of picking the strawberries yourself. You don't have to have the management problems of looking after backpackers picking for you. You can get your customers to do their own picking. They're paying you just for the fruit that they walk away with. It's great. Now, you need to think about that. Do you want customers tromping through your strawberry field? Is that actually what you want to do on your weekends? Is that actually the way that you have set up your strawberry patch? You need to think about where you want to be in the supply chain. Do you want to be selling to market? Do you want to be driving to market with your truck and your strawberries and coming home with money? Or do you want a whole group of people driving out from the city and coming into your strawberry patch? Or do you want to be going around selling to restaurants? Or do you want to be making strawberry jam and having a cafe on your front porch? There are lots of ways that you can change the supply chain, but you need to understand where you want to be in it. And so thinking about your position in the supply chain is one way to think about how you fit into the big picture. That's all I'm going to say about it for the moment. Another way is to go really big. So this is a dry diagram from my PhD, which is why it's a little bit scribbly. Now, what I've done is I've said we can divide the world up on two axes. On one axis, we're talking about the extractive process of, we dig up phosphate from an island in the Pacific, we spread that phosphate on our land, we let the excess of it flow into the streams, we grow the food, we take the food to market, and then if we haven't picked all of the crop, we just bulldoze that into the soil. That's an extractive process. It's basically mining the soil. Or we can be regenerative and we can try and improve the natural resources that we've given. So that's one axis. On one end, we're regenerative. On the other end, we're extractive. That's the up and down axis on this map. The other axis is that we can be equitable. We can share things with each other. And at the other end, we can be very exploitative. So when we think about human history, I told you I was going to be talking about the big picture. when we think about human history, indigenous kinds of agriculture or food production were equitable and regenerative, or our ideal of them is that they lived equitably and regeneratively. They lived in harmony with nature and they didn't fight so much with each other over those resources. They worked together to cooperatively harness the bounty of nature. Whereas now, so they were, let's see if I can get my mouse onto your screen. I don't know if I can, so I'll forget about that as a plan. So those kind of indigenous cultures were in the top, yes, we've got the same right and left, the top right-hand side of the screen. Our modern world is crashing into the planetary boundaries. We're so exploitative and so extractive that the planet cannot cope with the amount of stuff we are taking, the amount of resources we're taking out of those natural systems. And that's why the diagram gets a little bit pointy in that bottom left-hand corner. And so you and I, as regenerative food providers, are thinking about ways that we can drag our practice out of that bottom left-hand corner back towards the middle of the diagram with a bit of balance. And so what I've been working on is what is happening in different sectors of the food industry, farmers markets, food networks, new ideas like vertical farming or rooftop farming. And one of the things that's clear to me is that a lot of these new processes are really very industrial. You need a lot of money and you need a lot of industrial processes to build a skyscraper and then put a vertical farm in a lift well or on the outside of the building. They're not necessarily going to get us out of that bottom left-hand corner. They might drag us back up towards the regenerative end, out of the extractive end, and certainly all of our renewable energy technologies are trying to avoid us crashing into that extractive boundary, but they're not necessarily going to build a better world. That's enough for me raving on about that. I could talk about that for weeks because that's what I'm studying. What's important for us is to understand that that is the big picture and we need to think about where we want to be on that map. That's why I'm sharing that with you now. Now we get to the point where I think it's important to start, and that is what keeps you awake at night. Because the things that are on our mind, the things that we care about, the things that we worry about, those are the things that those are the problems we have that we have to solve. And if we can think about those things in the framework of the big picture, and I've just outlined 5 ways of looking at the big picture, if we can think about the things that keep us awake at night in terms of that big picture, then we're starting to get somewhere. So that's how I'm framing the way we look at our passion. We should think about our passion in terms of what keeps us awake at night. And at some point in this talk, I want to go through a worked example of how we start with a list of the things that keep us awake at night, and then we use those big picture diagrams that I've shown you to actually organise that list of frightening, terrifying problems that do keep us awake at night into a plan. So my question for you is, do you want to go through that worked example now, or do you want to go through some other high-level things about the business process and about the supply chain? Or do you have any questions about what I've said or comments on what I've said?
Yeah, so I'll open up to the floor if anyone wants to use this opportunity to raise their physical hand or virtual hand. We can definitely ask questions now. Otherwise, I love this question because I think it's a real good way of understanding what people's thoughts are at night, and I think we can get a lot out of an exercise like this. So this I think is a really good, cool question to be asking more often, I think.
So your vote's to drill down a bit more, Ray?
Well, if everyone wants to nod or say yes or no, yeah, so everyone's nodding yes. We have an 80%.
All right, so just excuse me while I flick through the next 20 slides or something and get to the starting point of that.
Yeah.
So you can see there's lots of diagrams.
I saw Peter Andrews on one of your slides there. That's a good teaser.
All right. So let's start with what keeps me awake at night and then drill down. Now, you're going to notice my eyes going down a lot because I'm reading small print on my big screen. So excuse me for not looking at you in the eye all the time. So what keeps me awake at night? Sort of questions that I've got on my list at the moment. I need to do more social media. I need to improve my technical skills. I need to get more product. I've got one book out there at the moment. I need to put other books in there so that people think of me as a supplier of books. My brother died a year ago because of COVID. We haven't all got together. That keeps popping up in my sort of nighttime whirlpool of things to think about. I need to reach out. I need to reach more customers because I've got, however many 100 followers I've got on social media, and, some percentage of them buy things. I need more people to buy things so that I can survive. I need to identify what things are the best paying, and so on and so on and so on. So this list is probably different to your list. There are probably some similarities to your list. It's a list. We've all got a list. Now, when I'm working with people, I say, you've got a week. Make a list. Come make as many things as you can now. Think about it for a week. Stop when you get to 32 things. A list of more than 32 things is too hard to deal with. If you keep thinking of things, work out if they're more important than the things on your list of 32, but come back to me next week with a list of 32 things or less. And that's how I start with people. And then the next thing I say to them is put a date on that. So I need to start making more social media now. So I put June on it. I need to improve my technical skills. So I've said, okay, I'll get around to that next year. I need more product lines. Okay, well, I need a couple of months to think about how I'm going to do that. So I put that in the future. My brother died a year ago, or more than a year ago now, 14 months ago. So I put dates on each thing on my list. So that's the next step in this process of starting with what keeps me awake at night. So you can all imagine doing that. So none of these steps are complicated. None of these steps are abstract. None of these steps are beyond our capability or require any particular skill. Then what I've done is I've organised them. White on yellow is not a good combination of colours, Jeffrey. But anyway, now I've organised these, I've sorted them by date. And I've marked in red all of the things that are in the past or all of the things that are beyond this next Christmas. So now I'm only looking at the things that are happening in the next couple of months. So already I've just halved my list simply by organising it by date. That comes from a area of psychology called ACT, Action, Act, Commit and Think, or something. I can't remember what the T is for. But it's an approach for actually reducing the amount of noise in our head. So tragic as my brother's death was, he was my baby brother. So, that makes me very afraid of my own mortality and so on. He was only 54, but, sad as it is, and as much as I can tug your heartstrings by talking about that, it doesn't help me plan my business. So I just knock it off this list because this list is about things that are going to help me plan my business activities. And so those things that are in the past, I can't do anything about them now. So off the list they go. The things that are in the future might be important, but unless there's some aspect of them that has a trigger now, I'm going to take them off the list just because I can, because what I'm trying to do is make a plan. Now, the next step, and again, we've got white on yellow, so you can't read my headline, but my headline says group these and look for dependencies. So if there are two things on your list and one thing has to be done first before the other thing can be done, then they belong together and you only do the thing, you only worry about the thing that has to be done first. So I've grouped mine under a couple of headings: increase profit, the first orange block; grow sales, the second block; and then grow sales by having more product lines is the third block. So what I've done is I've grouped the things that are the same. So there were three things on my list that involved getting more customers. So getting more customers was one of the things on my list. And then three of the things were about how I was going to get more customers. increasing profit is different from getting more customers. It's actually making me more efficient as a business. It's actually allowing me to get more money out of the same activity. Now, that happened to have an earlier date, but it's more important because if I can get more money for doing the same amount of activity, that's a really, really important thing to do, because then I might be able to afford to pay someone to help me do the other things on my list. So if I can identify my best paying customers and identify my best paying products, and I can focus on those things, then I'll get more money by the same amount of activity. So they're really important. Now, you notice that I had a thing on my list, reduce waste by selling more all products. So if I'm growing strawberries or coffee beans and I'm binning half of them because I can't sell them, that's waste. I'm losing money by doing that. And so that came into increased profit and grow sales. And when I thought about why did it appear two places on the list, I realized it's actually an outcome. It's not an activity. It's not part of my plan. It's what I want my plan to achieve. And so when we are looking at the list, we need to think about every item on the list and think about whether it fits into a plan or whether it's something that's going to happen because of the plan. I can plan to reduce waste by selling more products, but I have to think about how I'm going to do that. And so it's not really an activity that I can do. It's an outcome. I have to think about what activities go into my plan to allow me to do that. So that, we do need to finesse this process. And so there are skills involved once you get to this level of thinking about your list, but they're not skills that involve any more than common sense and actual practical approach. So by thinking about our list strategically, we can reduce the number of items on our list. And what we've done here is we reduce it to 3 different activities. And what I usually do is I go a next step. I say, well, let's think about which of those things is more important to do first. And so then I go to the where do I want to be in 5 years, or where do I want to be in 5 months? And I say, which of these, if I can only do one of these things at a time, which thing am I going to do first? Which thing am I going to do second? And which thing am I going to do third? Now you'll see that drought proofing there, which for me in the city of Brisbane means getting a water tank, doesn't belong in any of these groups. It's still important, it's still on my list, but it's a different plan. It's actually just saving up some money and buying a water tank. It's not a strategic part of this business plan. So I haven't taken it off my list, but I'm not worrying about it in terms of that strategic structuring. It's another item, it's another thing that's on the list that's outside of this now structured business plan. Now, I've created this business plan without going back to any of those big picture things. So it might seem that those big picture things haven't been very useful. But what we're going to do next is now we're going to review that plan through the lens of all of those big picture things that I talked about earlier. And you'll see what difference that makes when we actually do that. So I love writing, I love reading, I love talking, I love food, and I love technology. So those are the things that I love. I'm not telling you that you should love those things. I'm using myself as an example so that I don't have to ask you awkward questions, or that this doesn't take a long time. If I'm doing a face-to-face session with a group of people that takes about 4 hours, then I'll use someone else as an example. But tonight, because we're just doing a slideshow and we need to keep moving, I'm using myself as an example. So pardon me for talking about myself, but I do quite like it. Okay, so I love writing, reading, talking, and so on. In 5 years, I want successful books, clients, and I'd love to have this stuff turned into an app. So that's where I want to be in 5 years. And now we're talking about practical things, because I've just come out of the process of looking at the things that keep me awake at night. So instead of thinking about where I want to be in 5 years in terms of, I'd love to have more time, I would love to be sitting on a beach with a drink with an umbrella. Now I'm thinking about that in terms of the practical problems that I've got. So by starting with the practical problems and then going back to the big picture, I've focused my mind on the practical problems. And so that's why I'm saying start with what keeps you awake at night and then go to those big picture things. My purpose, what I've discovered over the years is that I get the maximum joy in my life when I explain something to someone and a light bulb goes off on their head. I really feel that the skills that I have, the talents that I have, the joy that I get out of doing that makes me feel really good. I know what makes me tick. So I'm calling that my purpose, helping people have a light bulb open. I teach for a living. Most of my money at the moment comes from being a university lecturer. And the reason I'm in that job is because I love that light bulb moment. So my vision is to be successful supporting food providers. And I would love to be doing that around the world through conversations like this. So that's my vision of myself. When I imagine myself, that's what I imagine. And so my mission is to solve business problems for food providers. My values are just sustainability. By just, I don't mean only sustainability. I mean justice, as in fair, equitable sustainability, grassroots practice. So I actually like walking down the road to a vacant block, putting a compost heap in there, knocking on the neighbours' doors and saying, I'm setting up a compost heap on the vacant block. I like doing that kind of thing. And I think that's important because I think those are the kind of activities that are going to change the world. And for whatever reason, mainly because of my family background with Pa and Tom and Ray, I love dealing with food. I love eating it. I love cooking it. I love growing. So those are my values. And the impact that I want to have is to create community hubs of production and sustainable and just food systems. And I would like to have some impact academically. I would like to be explaining to all of these theorists who have grand ideas about what sustainability means, that actually getting your hands in the dirt and working with your local community is really important. And I would like to work out how to explain that academically, because I know that's true, but when I read the literature, I don't quite see other people coming to that same conclusion. Or the people who've come to that conclusion, I see them having a hard time convincing academics about why that's important. And part of the reason was when you've got big problems like climate change or overpopulation, you have to deal with the big picture as well as at that community level. And that big picture stuff, people like the United Nations can pay academics a lot more than your local community farm can. So universities tend to head for the UN and European government and so on, rather than their local vacant block. Now, my brightest light, my hedgehog, is to write and talk about urban food. So I get paid by a university to talk. I love talking. I get paid for talking. My reputation is mostly about writing. So if you Google me, you'll find out about my books or my stints at politics, which is again talking. And I'm focused on urban food because I've enjoyed living in a city, and the only way I can deal with food production is either to get out of the city or actually solve the problems of how we're going to produce and provide food in the cities. So that's me. Now I've reviewed that. I've gone through all of those 5 big picture slides that I talked about and put it in one list. And it took me a couple of hours to actually get that straight, but I did that just for this talk tonight in the last 2 days. It's not a big deal. Once you've gone through the list of things that keep you awake at night, you can actually do a list like that reasonably quickly. You might have to read up a bit on the purpose map or the Inner Hedgehog or whatever to get it straight in your head, but it's not rocket science. All right, then you need to review your role in the supply chain, because now when you think about what you like to do, what your practical problems are, now you've got some context to think about that. So I write and talk and advise. Business Queensland is a government department that sends mentors out to talk to small business. I'm one of their mentors. That's good. That's consistent with my plan. So it stays in the plan. That's something that I'm going to keep in the plan, because now that I've done that plan just for this talk, it fits. It's cogent, it's coherent, it's consistent with the plan. Networks like you guys invite me to speak. That's great. That's how I reach people like you and talk about the things that I love talking about. So that's good. That's in the plan. Griffith University extends my reputation and, publishes my writing and so on. and it pays me. So Griffith stays in the plan. But doing social media and getting out there, knocking on doors and selling things, it's something I can do, but it's distracting me from the things I love. So what I need to do is work out how to pay someone else to do that stuff. So that's something I've been trying to do, and it's been dividing my time. I haven't been doing it brilliantly well. And so I need to find some other way to solve that problem. Now, I don't have a plan for solving that problem. All I've done is identify that that's a problem that I need to solve. But I'm taking it off my list, or I'm putting a new item on my list, is find someone else to do it. Find a way to pay that someone else. And so that means make yourself more profitable goes up my list, because the only way I can pay someone else to do social media is to have some money left over every week. Then I can strategically oversee the actual process of publishing books and promoting them. I'm the writer, I'm the thinker, I'm the strategist, but I don't want to be the salesperson or the social media person. It's not that I'm afraid of social media. I'm a technologist from way back, but I am 62. It's not my game. You know, Ray, you're of a much better age to be a social media person. I don't like using my phone particularly. I much prefer to be sitting at a keyboard and a screen. So there's a whole lot of things that annoy me about the modern world. Multi-factor authentication. I've got to go and get my phone off its charger, log in with my password just to say, yes, I do want to go to a website. I'm going, that drives me mad. And when I talk to people about it, they say, oh, yeah, but everyone's got their phone by their side all the time. I go, well, I don't. And they go, yeah, but that's because you're an old fart. So working out what you're good at, working out what you love is an important part of reviewing your plan. And it makes sense once you start with what keeps you awake at night, and then you work through all the big picture stuff. Now, I've talked about my supply chain, which is all about, you know, selling books or ideas or business consultancy. In your case, your supply chain is things like fertilizer providers, people who pick fruit, or veterinarians that come and attend to your livestock. You have a completely different supply chain. And I'm not going to try and tell you how to suck eggs or grow eggs or whatever it is that you do. And I've used the example of myself so that you can think about the process, not so that you can solve the same problems that I have to solve. Now, when I go back to my list, it hasn't really changed that much. But if you look now, I still haven't worked out how to get my mouse on the big screen. So I'm just going to count down. If we look at the top, it says increase profit. Then we go down, identify best paying. If identify best paying, the fourth one there is reduce volunteer radio. That wasn't on the list before. Now, I love doing radio because I love talking to people. And I get the opportunity on volunteer radio to talk about some of these things. But in terms of the list that we've just made, it actually is a huge use of my time. It takes me nearly a whole day to create 2 hours of radio. And if I put less time into it than that, I'm not proud of the radio that I produce. But I don't actually have a day a week to put into a project which I'm just doing for fun. So I've committed to do that radio until the end of this year, and I'm not going to break that commitment because I got into it with my eyes wide open and I knew what I was doing and I love doing it. So I put that on there as an action, a new action that's added to my list now that I've thought strategically. By the end of the year, I'm not going to do that 2 hours of community radio. I won't necessarily stop volunteering for the radio station, but I'm not going to do a day a week on it. I'm going to reduce the amount of volunteering that I do for that project. So a new thing has come on the list because we've thought about it strategically. Similarly, I've now got more social media has now got pay someone beside it because I've worked out that that's what actually has to happen. And I've recognised that I have to join more networks and attend more networking events. I actually need to stop trying to be heroic and do everything myself. I need to be working with other people and talking with people and saying, let's do this together, not I can do a radio show and write books and create talks and do a PhD all by myself. I need to be networking with people. So, whether it's because I'm shy or arrogant or whatever, I've done too much stuff by myself and not enough stuff as part of a network. So I've added another change that I need to make through thinking strategically. So even though the list looks pretty much like the old list, it's got a couple of new things on it, and those things are very, very important. And so suddenly what was just a reorganising of our list of things that keep us awake at night actually starts to take on a strategic plan. And so by adding the big picture stuff to the reorganised list of things that keep us awake at night, we're now coming up with a strategic business plan that helps us think about business. I think that's probably a couple of slides left. Let's see what else I've added to that. Yeah, too many words. All right, let's stop there. So, hey, I just want to check in that makes sense and has been somewhat useful, and talk about how that resonates with you, or what kind of things that you might think when you look at that process, and is there anything that I can help you to sort out in terms of what we've just talked about, what we've done, why I've done it.
Excellent. Well, that was super fun, and thank you very much for taking us through that. I'll open up to the floor. Anyone want to drill down? I think this is such a valuable exercise, and I think more people in the planet need to sit down and mastermind this out of their brain and onto a strategic plan. If only more of us were taught how to do this intuitively and naturally, rather than it keeping us up at night. I think it's definitely tools that should be in your tool belt. It's been, I think the most important thing is a date. That is a really cool little small tip as well. When you have an action plan, having dates along things. I think it's Parkinson's law, where like a task or an activity will expand and contract depending on the time that you allot it. It's like you can clean the house in 10 minutes if a guest decides to say, I'm popping over in 10 minutes, but other days it takes 4 hours, So
hopefully you do a better job in the 4 hours than you do in 10 minutes. And there's not going to be a whole pile of dirty clothes under the bed if you've taken 4 hours.
Yeah, just throw it in the washing machine and close the door. Not talking about experience. So anyone want to elaborate or talk about through this, or is there other parts of the presentation that you want to dig deeper on? I think you're very ambitious, and I love your way of thinking of like talking, educating, community radio, writing books. You kind of sound like me. So I resonated a lot with a lot of that stuff. And admittedly, I outsourced my social media to our rock star Bella. So she is my secret weapon of getting a lot of content out.
Yay, Bella. I saw you stalk me on LinkedIn today, so I think I might have even messaged you to say, hey. Now, Jeffrey, Kay and Jeffrey. Jeffrey, I want to talk to you because you've got the same name as me. Have you got anything to say about what I've just shown you?
Keith Jeffrey. It's Kay and Keith.
Kay and Keith. Oh, yeah. That's your surname.
Yeah.
Okay, my apologies.
Just right. Do you spell your name the same as mine?
No, I'm a geo man.
Oh, you're a geo man.
Yeah, go with geography and geology.
Yeah, a lot of. Yeah. Okay. Besides that, you're taking us back a fair bit. We've explored this avenue quite a few times, but it's really good to run back through a lot of sort of stuff again. We really enjoy it. This is what we do. Is we manage businesses and people. It's really good. Thoroughly.
Okay. And so what sort of businesses and people do you manage?
Beg yours?
What sort of businesses do you manage?
I've been in the building business. I was a builder, and I've also been a manufacturer.
Okay.
But we retired. Our manufacturing now is gardening. So.
Okay.
That's what we do these days. you know, sort of we're into biodynamics and bees and worms and plants and all sorts of things like that, right? Soil.
Yeah, yeah.
We're very involved with soil bacteria, biology, that sort of stuff. It's
and are you trying to make money out of it?
No, as long as we can keep ourselves going and you know, keep food on the table, that's about as far as we want to go with it at this point.
Keep ourselves healthy. That's what it's all about.
That's what it's about, is being able to get up the next day and do it again.
We don't mind getting old so long as we can enjoy it while we're doing it.
No, good. Okay, thanks, Kay. Thanks, Keith.
Right.
I had the pleasure of hanging out with Kay and Keith, and we made a very quick video about their journey. And I just want to quote Keith saying that he's done so many interesting things in his journey, and by far, biodynamics was the most interesting thing he's ever done. And that blew my mind when I heard him say that. And their video is getting released this week. So I still have to send it over for approval. But I love the conversation that we had, just sharing their biodynamic journey. And I can relate with that. You know, discovering the world of soil has blown my mind as well.
Thanks.
Now, Martin, you're lurking in the dark. I can't see you, but I'd love to hear you. Do you want to comment at all on what we've just talked about?
Geoff, can I stop your sharing? Is that okay?
Yep.
Yep. Cool. Martin?
I don't know what's going on here. This is the same place I was sitting last week when I did a Zoom meeting with you, and it worked. Anyway, I tried to...
Well, you've got the lights off, mate. I think that's what's wrong.
No, the lights are all on. Anyway, while it's been off and you can't see what I'm doing, I've actually just cooked myself fish and chips while I was...
I'll just imagine how good looking you are then.
Yeah, no, bald head, but he doesn't shave often enough. So, yeah, don't worry about it.
Right.
Anyway, look, fantastic stuff that you're talking about. And stuff that I need to do, stuff that I've already been exposed to. So I think we're getting to that. You got to, you know, that one about you got to see it or hear it 7 times before it sinks in. Well, I'm probably at about 5 now, so another 2 times, and we'll be with the
watch the replay twice.
Well, whereabouts are you, Martin?
Nyngan, New South Wales.
Okay.
And
next time I'm doing an outback trip, I'll come and bang on your door. That'll be time number 6.
Sure. I got plenty of things to show you and stories to tell you and share. And this is pretty cool. This meeting.
The town on the floodplain that keeps flooding?
It only ever flooded once. That was years before I ever got here.
Okay.
And there's another whole lot of stories there. We've got a levee around Nyngan now. And the levee was supposed to have been put there, but they spent the money on lots of other things except the levee, and that's why that flooded that time. But anyway, we've got a levee now, and if Nyngan goes underwater again, like Noah's going to be turning up tomorrow.
Okay. Funny, because a little bit of travelling I've done, one of the things that struck me is when you go to when you look at older countries, all the villages are on hills and all the farms are on the floodplains. Like for some reason, we've done it the other way around. We built, like you look at Brisbane, all the hilltops have got trees and parks on them, and all the houses are on the floodplains. Just
I follow Indio Jones on the Facebook. He's a bit of a controversial one, and he's always throwing rocks at people. You know, why would you idiots live in a floodplain? And if there's a photo in the archives of the houses around you being underwater, it's only a matter of time, and it's going to happen again. You know, so you know, how dumb are we sometimes?
All right. Well, we should stick to the topic now. Moving along. Anyone else want to comment there? Monica, you're the next person on my screen. So, do you have anything you want to add or ask?
Well, I just would like to make a comment. I find it very interesting what you're telling, and I definitely will take on your ideas. What keeps me awake at night is, you know, all kind of new ideas all the time. And I am working on so many different fields and areas that sometimes it's very, very difficult to actually narrow it down to the most important one, because in my head, everything is very important and the newest ideas are the most important ones. And then, yeah, sometimes it gets a bit overwhelming, and I keep on doing things, and I feel that I'm, of course, getting really very far, but still always being a little bit behind.
And I mean, I think a couple of us have mentioned that we get distracted by new things. And so what I do is about every 6 months, I go back and I go through the whole process again. And I do it slightly different in different ways, depending what new tools or stuff I've come across. And, you know, that means that I'm refreshing the ideas all the time, but I am going back to those sort of core things. So I'm trying to keep myself honest and focused, but I'm acknowledging that, you know, new ideas and new opportunities do pop up and you get excited about them. So that's one way I handle that.
Yeah, well, I think that the main important thing is actually, you know, to be able to distinguish what is important, what is most fun, and what is the most important to do. Because often you go for the things which you find, you know, which are the most exciting for you, instead of sticking to the ones which would probably bring you further but are a bit boring.
Yeah. Now, Megan, your otter seems to be frozen behind you. It hasn't moved for ages. I think it must be in the freezer or something.
It is.
Yeah. So is it an otter? What sort of animal is it?
I've got no idea. It's just a picture I had on the computer.
It's not what you're breeding on your regenerative farm?
It isn't, no. No. We might be cold in Victoria at the moment, but not that cold.
Yeah, not really. And so what sort of reflections would you make on my comments tonight?
Oh, I think I've got some homework to do, I must say. Yeah, we've sort of been taking an avenue at the moment which we're not going to continue with. So yeah, this has actually probably come up at the right time, and I'm going to sit down and do some homework. And
probably a bit of a challenge then.
Yes, yeah, we've been raising dairy bull calves, so we're not actually going to continue that. So but yeah, this is actually going to help, sort of lead us in a different direction. And your stuff that you've been talking about is probably going to get us thinking about a few different ways to go down with the business. So yeah.
Okay. Well, I think I sort of typed some links onto the slides as we went, and we'll certainly share the slides with you all afterwards, but I'll make sure that I've got links to all of those resources. That actual process of turning your list of things to keep you awake at night into a plan, I haven't sort of formalized that. So you'd have to use these slides, this video, as the sort of example of that process until I get around to doing that. But certainly feel free to do that, or drop me an email and, you know, ask any questions that you've got.
Will do. Thank you.
Mark, you're last on my screen. How are you?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, got it to work. Oh, pretty good. Interesting talk. Sort of, I was previously internet software developer previously, becoming a farmer. I left the IT industry in 2015 and saw a lot of similarities of how we used to look at things in the IT come business analyst sort of realm. And it's I'm going to send this on to my wife, who lives and works in Hong Kong, because she does all this sort of stuff. She re-engineers banking systems and all that sort of stuff, and I think she'll find that quite interesting. But knowing my luck, she'll just say, "Oh yeah, know all about that."
Oh well.
So,
You know, sometimes it's the simplest things that have the biggest impact. So
yeah,
it's not
that's
always
right. So
it's not always
hopefully
new or complicated.
that's
Sometimes
right.
just a
Hopefully
way of-
I'll fill a void.
Hmm.
Yeah, no, but it's been good.
All right. Now, Ray, I put together different slides about other things, but I don't know whether that you think that's enough, or do we want to, you know, go back to some of those?
The only other thing is we have another guest called iPad. I'm not sure who that is. They don't have their screen on, but if they wanted to have an opportunity to talk as well, feel free to unmute and speak now, just to include everyone. Helen was also very curious and put in the chat what your slide about Peter Andrews is. Peter Andrews is a near and dear friend of ours and hung out with Helen and Hugo many times. So there's just some curiosity about what you were going to talk about him about.
Well, iPad, are you there? Hello, iPad.
No, I think they might maybe not have sound, or not sure what's going on there.
Might not
sure
have a mic.
So, yeah.
So Peter Andrews, the quote from Peter that I was using is his comment that every living thing is packaged sunshine.
Okay.
And the context I was using that quote is in terms of the business process. As a general manager, I found thinking about business as a pipeline very useful, and I found a theory called the theory of constraints very useful. And I'm tempted just to go through the whole slide presentation, but anyway, that comment about every living thing being, you know, bottled sunshine, the amount of sun that falls on our land is one of those things that we can't control. And so what Peter is saying is we need to maximize the things that we have available to us. And the way that he talks about maximizing the amount of sunshine is to not have bare earth. Because if you've plowed your field and you've got bare earth sitting in the sun, you're not growing from it. And so you're not maximizing the sunshine that's available. And so that is a really perfect example of how to think about the theory of constraints. So I'm happy to whiz through those slides or talk about those slides or come back another time and do those slides, whatever you prefer. But that's why Peter was in that presentation.
Awesome. Yep. Thanks. Helen, Hugo, did you have anything that you wanted to add? And Geoff, I would love to take you up on that offer to go through those other parts of the slide in another virtual classroom. I'm happy to get nods if everyone would like that. We can definitely make that happen, whether it be in a fortnight's time, because we may have a bit of an issue with the current speaker, or the one after. So loved what you've shared tonight. So Helen, Hugo, any comments, reflections?
Well, there's so much in it, but I like the Ikagai thing, or the Ikagai, your inner hedgehog, because one of the things that one leading consultant said that farmers don't take their spare time or their relaxed time seriously. And I think we've got to look at that thing, and because our health and is very much related to stress. So if we can have less stress, you know, we're going to live longer and etc. So it's a very good chart to look at and get a bit of balance, or try to get the balance.
Well, I've got a 6-point version of that I use as a web diagram. So, you know, if you think of a series of hexagons as like a spider's web, then the axes of those hexagons can be different values. And so I call them web diagrams. I think they've got different names these days, but you can use web diagrams to map the progression of values over time. And so what I encourage people to do is map not just their passion, their money and their reputation, but also, you know, their sense of spirit, and, you know, other aspects of their lives on those web diagrams, and then to look at it every 6 months or every year and see, because what you see immediately when you do it the first time is you see where your life is out of balance. And so you understand, I'm spending all my time working, I've got no time for learning, or I've got no time for love or whatever. And then you can think about how you want to change that. And then when you look at it over the years, you can see, oh, I've actually achieved that. I've actually managed to take more time for myself. And I learned that from a consultant to macadamia farmers. And the first thing he asked his farmers is, "Oh, when did you last have a holiday? Or where and when is your next holiday?" I think he actually was the question he asked. And when everyone goes, "Oh, holidays, I haven't had a holiday in 10 years. He's going, "Well, that's what's wrong with your business. That's where you need to start. Plan your next holiday. And now let's look at plan your business around that." And he was using the web diagram. He was using natural pests to help macadamia farmers control. He was using natural predators to help macadamia farmers control pests. So he'd go in with wasp eggs and so on cards and hang them from trees. And he used the web diagram to manage soil quality, water usage, energy use, etc., etc. And he'd come up with a plan for using solar-powered nut drying systems, which I won't go into now, but that was a good one. And when he was telling me about the question that he asked about the farmers about their holidays, I said, "But it's not on your web diagram." And he said, "Well, it's got nothing to do with soil quality or output production." And I said, "But why would you measure the productivity of the farm and tell the farmers they've got to look after themselves?" And he said, "Oh, well, that means I've got to rethink my whole consultancy model." And I said, "Well, that's a good idea. Why don't you go and do that?" Anyway, yes, holidays, important. We should all think about our next holiday. Even though, as Monica and Ray said, we're all so busy with new ideas, we don't have time for
I have a whiteboard and a Trello board and millions of other things to put all my ideas on. And I'm like Monica, I get excited about new ideas. They become more important because I'm more excited. They're, new projects. So definitely can relate to that. Awesome. Well, I think this has been a lovely conversation and one that's definitely very good timing. And I'm curious to hear about after the call, Megan. I'd love to hear what you're going to move down to, understanding where you're pivoting, which is a big, startup and business kind of plan. And it's okay to change the plan. I think once you have a strategic document and you have a bit of an idea, that's the whole point of a plan, is that you've got this vision, but you can kind of navigate it and move as need to. It should be dynamic and liquid. And like Geoff said, revisit it every 6 months or every 3 months and see what's important now. So Geoff, it's been absolutely great hanging out with you. And I think, there's just been some really great light bulb moments for me. And there's physically a light there going on.
Yeah, as you said that, your finger pointed to the light bulb. It was beautiful.
So I was looking for the reaction before to see if there was a light bulb emoji that I could put, but I could only do a love heart. And to show that
the fact that you've got a light bulb over your head is just as good.
Awesome. Well, I think on that note, we've gone over the hour. Is there any last minute thoughts, questions? Otherwise, I'm happy to let everyone get onto their dinner or their vino or their cheese boards or whatever they got lined up for their dinner tonight, including you, Geoff.
All right. Well, thank you all for your attention and comments. It was really interesting to talk to you. And it sounds like we might meet again.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love that. That sounds great. Well, thank you very much, Geoff, for all that. Just a quick note to our members who are on our call. We have changed our Circle website branding to be the Soil Learning Centre. So that is what we are calling our hub now. We want it to be the centre of your life where you learn about soil and the life under the ground. So new colour scheme and the replay of the webinar from tonight will be up there shortly as Bella gets it all sorted. And Geoff, if you could email us the slides, they will get added there as well. So thank you for sharing those. I think those frameworks and templates are going to be a very good, useful tool for all of us.
Okay, so
self-included.
I'll edit it so it's only got the slides we looked at tonight. And so you probably won't get it till tomorrow, Bella.
Awesome. Good. And and I'll email you about booking in a part 2 of this or the next session, because I think it's awesome.
Yeah, I'll have a look at the diary and we'll sort that out.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, everyone.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Good stuff. And remember, get outside, get your hands dirty, and keep digging deeper into your soils. Thanks, everyone. Lots of love.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.